Hey, it's Azriel Lawless. And once again, you have taken the elevator straight into Hellavella and found yourself another Lawless interview. And today I'm here with JW or John Golan, who has a Vella out there, and it's called A Wolf Before the Storm, correct?
Yep.
And it's got a strong female lead. I know that about it.
Yep.
So when did you, here's the famous first question, when did you first start writing?
From the standpoint of writing something novelesque, I have to go back to high school. So I wrote my first attempt at a fantasy novel in high school. That was just a little while ago.
A minute.
Not that long. It was, I was not yet ready to take something like that on. So I don't regret having attempted it. I certainly learned from the attempt, but I really didn't have the right skill set at that point in my life.
Right.
And then from there, when I was in university, I did go a completely different direction. So whereas my first high school book was a novel, it was in a fantasy setting. When I got into the university setting, I actually put together a piece of nonfiction. It was an historical piece, kind of a documentary type thing on the Cold War era, and a particular chapter in that. Actually submitted it for publication when I graduated from the university. That was in '93. 8 rejection letters later, I put it on the back burner, and then life happened. Career, kids, but I did keep working on that particular book over the years, and refined a little bit. And then in 2013, I decided I was ready to resubmit it, that I had polished it enough. And I was a little bit wiser then, and submitted it to 3 small presses who specialize in that particular genre. Picked up by the second one, and it was published in January of 2016. So that was my first published book. It was a lot of work. So anything that's going to be factual, historical, you got to do a lot of research for. Exactly. You got to have multiple sources. It's like, yeah, it was a lot of work. So I said, I still want to write, but I'm going to try something that's going to be a little bit easier than that, and won't take me a decade. So I decided to pick up fantasy fiction again. And it became an opportunity really to share this passion with my 3 teenage daughters. So I would read to them or share with them some of the books that I had grown up with and read in high school and enjoyed, and they shared with me some of theirs. And they became my beta readers when I started writing. So they gave me a lot of feedback. They were not gentle. It was
kids never are.
It's like it's when your middle daughter tells you, it's like, yeah, you read a lot of Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. It's like, yeah, I did. It's like yeah, it shows. It doesn't work in today's world. So it's like, okay, well, how should I be writing it? And that kind of gelled from there. So I published my first ebook through Kindle. It was an ebook and also, of course, a paperback in January of 2019. It was the first part in what I was planning to be a 4-part series. So the second edition came out in December of 2019, the third one in November of 2020. And then that's when I heard about this Kindle Vella thing that was coming. So at the time, I had this idea for a prequel for one of the characters in the novel, in the longer series, to give kind of their backstory. And I decided that might be something that would be amenable to like a Vella type approach. And that's how Wolf Before the Storm was gelled. So it was the backstory to a character who I kind of felt like her story needed to be told, as to how did she become the person that she is when you get to the third novel in the book. And of course, cool. That came out in February of this year.
Okay, so part 1, January 2019. Part 2, December 2019. Part 3 was when?
November 2020. That was those are full up novels.
And then you found out.
and then I put together my first Vela. And it's since February I've been releasing it one episode per week, every Friday. And in the background, meanwhile, I'm working on finishing the fourth novel in the original series, because I do want to finish that up. And then I've got a couple of Velas that are also spin-offs from that series that those are more in first draft as opposed to being in editing like the fourth novel is.
Man, this is awesome. So anybody who clicks the links that I'm going to leave in the description of this video, they're going to have this rich prequel story of a strong female character. I believe her name's Callisto. Is that right?
Yep.
And then they're going to be able to just dive right into volume 1 of the book and just roll right on through. That's awesome.
So it's been a journey. I think for a lot of authors, some are more direct and get there quicker, and some of us take a much longer time to get there.
Right. Well, my road was long and winding, much like yours, with life and career getting in there, and kind of just taking up the 3 decades it did.
Yep. Takes a little while.
But now we're here, and we're with Vela. And where did you hear about Vela? Did you just read it in an email?
Yeah, I saw it in different forums and that I was following online for readers and writers who publish in Kindle. So I was kind of tipped off. I mean, this is something that's now, and it's the ground floor, and obviously Amazon's got a lot of resources at their disposal. If they want it to work, they have the opportunity to try to make it work. So I figured, well, if you want to become an author, and I think most of us want people to read our work. I mean, there are not very many who write and they don't want anyone to read it. So if you want people to read your work, it helps to have a broader catalog. It helps to have different formats that you're available in. That's why you do paperback and ebook, and now Vela. So I just saw it as being the ground floor, hopefully, of something that might become something later.
I see being a writer is a lot like having a virtual store, and you're stuffing your store with inventory is what's going on. And the more inventory you have, the bigger chance you have at decent royalties. And, there you go. Bigger inventory, you get a bigger piece of the pie, ostensibly.
Yep.
I hope it works that way.
So, well, I did a lot of going into this, both myself and particularly my middle daughter, who takes a lot of this very seriously. Did a lot of research as to, look at the indie authors as opposed to the trad authors, and the ones who have actually, quote unquote, made it, who are making a living at it, and what features are common. And one of the common things is the quantity of books that they have in their catalog.
Correct.
If you're gonna make it a living out of it, and I'm not really looking for a living now, but it'd be nice to maybe retire and have some income, and maybe retire earlier than my 70th birthday. That would be nice too. So
I think it's jacked up to like 95 now, right?
Yeah, I know. It's gonna be 95 before I get there. So rather than wait quite that long, it's like, well, the biggest measure or indicator that you're likely to succeed is you got to have a big catalog for people to find. And it's not linear. It is very non-linear in terms of if you're an author with, let's say, a portfolio of 8 books compared to 4 books, you haven't just doubled your royalties. Because you're an easier author for them to find, it's probably gone up by about a factor of 4.
Right.
So because it just, once they read the first book, then they read the second, and so on and so forth. So for authors who actually want to be found, and I think that's most authors, that's a big tool. Probably the biggest tool we have at our disposal is to have a bigger inventory, a bigger catalog.
Well, and I just think that Vela is it's a no-brainer. You want to put it out there as a serial read, and then you can put it into a book. You don't have to take it down. you can still have your Vela sitting up there earning for you while you've got the novel out. And that's just fantastic to me. I think that's that's definitely the way I'm going to go. And I'm sure you're going to put this prequel in a book too.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, 30 days after the last chapter is released, you're available to put it into an ebook and paperback or whatever else you want to do. And they have hardcover now too. I haven't actually tried to go that route because it's more formatting, and I don't think there is as much reader demand for the hardcover right yet. But yeah, I mean, it's down the road. It's a possibility.
But you do paperbacks, right?
I do paperbacks. I mean, we are really very fortunate as authors to live in the era that we do.
No kidding.
With the electronic media, because I mean, back when I was in high school and thinking I had the next Lord of the Rings here or something, which it really wasn't, but that's okay. Your chances, even if it was great, of getting a publisher to take you seriously were pretty small. And there was only a handful of publishers, and that's all you could go to. And even the small presses were harder to get into. And now, I mean, the doors are open. If you are ambitious, if you're willing to work it and take on the roles that the publisher takes on, do the editing, do the cover work, all of that, marketing, yeah, you can do it. And so it was a very remarkable time to be an author.
You're certainly correct there. I have a good friend who is very successful as a Kindle writer. Now she's got, and I hope she doesn't listen to this because I'm going to lowball her here. She's got over 60. I think it's closer to 80 titles out there.
Yeah.
And that's been in the last 10 years or 11 years. And that's what it takes.
Yeah.
I was talking to another Vela writer, and she's one of the, I won't name her, but she's way up there in the ratings, and she's got, tons of reads. What's different? Well, she just humps all the time, adverting and writing. These people are writing 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000 words a day. I don't know how they're doing it.
Yeah. I can't quite do that with a regular full-time job and
everything
else.
No. Oh, my full-time job ate my brain. I worked in tech and was wiped out every day when I got home. Wiped out, so that your brain just dumps out. You don't want to do anything. You just want to sit there and let things chitter for a while. I couldn't. I found that, especially after I went into tech, that my creative writing went right out the window.
Yeah. It's time. It's the stress from a regular full-time job. It's a lot of things. So yeah, it's not easy to. I
admire you for keeping on and doing so well that you've got friggin' 3 novels out there in a Vela. So you're doing awesome. Any chance are your daughters going to write anything, you think?
Oh yeah. My middle one's already said absolutely. That's her intention.
Oh my God.
And she and I kind of share some of the same interests in the same genre. So we both like to write in a fantasy setting, primarily young adult setting. My oldest daughter is, and I've seen her writing as well. She's really more comfortable in the middle grade setting, which honestly is harder to get into as an ebook writer. But so she will probably eventually try it, her hand at it as well. But my middle daughter definitely is thinking along those lines.
What's a middle grade setting? What does that mean?
Middle grade, so you're thinking about the 7th to 8th grade, so middle school type authors. And the thing is when you get to the high school level, the young adult types, and high school, new adult, the college crowd, teenagers tend to have money in their pocket, at least some. They might have a part-time job. Their parents might give them spending money, get out of the house or whatever. They go to the mall. So they have the opportunity to spend some money on books that they choose themselves. And middle grade, it's a lot harder to get into, I believe, because more of the books that they pick up are going to be, well, this is what your parents picked out for you. This is what the school recommended. It's a hard audience to sell to. I'm hoping it gets easier.
Is that
I think
sort
it
of
will.
where R.L. Stein hangs out in that middle grade?
Yeah, it's yeah. So
Where
it's
Goosebumps is, you know?
yeah. It's so they're shorter novels. They're like novellas, and but again, if you want to be an author there, because I've seen authors who have done it, but they didn't rely on it solely. They were usually authors who they already were successful as like a young adult type author. Now they want to do a series that's middle grade. So they already have a name. They're not really depending on this as their sole income or whatever as an author. So they can consider moving into that audience. So yeah. So it's a little bit different audience, and I really hand it to the people who go after it, because that is not easy
I
to
do
break
think
into.
that your series is really doing well, though. I really do. You're like, oh, it's doing okay, but I think it's doing really well. You have over 800 reads. I'm trying to find it here. Okay, so it's got 32 episodes so far, 804 thumbs up. And you've only been, I looked at the first episode, you uploaded that sucker in January or something.
Yep. Yeah, beginning
Yeah,
of this year.
so I think you're doing great.
Yeah.
Are you using social media to get yourself
Yeah.
out there?
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the learning that I had to go through with this is trying to market Bella is different from trying to market a ebook or a Kindle book, because you don't have the same tool suite.
No, you don't.
So if you were I mean, if it was an ebook on Kindle, Kindle lets you have so many days per whatever it is, 4-month cycle, where you're allowed to offer it free, and you take advantage of those to make that a promotional, and you advertise all over the place, and you bring in as much readership as you can for those handful of days, and that builds the momentum that carries you through afterwards. So you might offer the first book in the series free, and that brings in readers for the second and the third, and that's kind of the strategy. You don't have any of that on Vella. So you've got a lot of it's social media. So it's a lot of legwork to try to go to advertise through social media. You can do Facebook ads, and I have done those. But as I said, it's not as easy as it is on regular Kindle, Amazon. Regular Amazon, you've got Amazon ads.
Yeah, that's what I was
So,
going to say. You get the
which is
opportunity to advert.
which is really a sweet way to actually target people who are looking at a book similar to yours, and who might be interested in reading yours as well. So things like that you can do for a conventional book right now, at least, you can't do on Vella. And hopefully that changes. But yeah, it does make it a little bit harder to market.
Yeah, and it really presses your nose to the wheel, I think, as far as getting out there, because if you don't, then you're
lost.
You will be.
Yeah,
absolutely, because you kind of need the community to help, pitch you, and that's what Hellavella YouTube is all about. There's no monetization to this stuff, because I don't care. What I care about is raising awareness of this platform, because I think it's great, actually. Americans aren't reading nearly as much as they used to, because nobody has any time, and everybody just watches television, and everybody has become, so accustomed to episodic content that I think this is just really the way it's going to go. And with Vella, you have the best of both worlds. You can offer it out there as episodic content, and then you can, format it as a book and put it out there as a book as well. So you can scoop up all the readers, from the teenagers to the well adults, well into adulthood. I just think it's great, personally. And you're right, we're lucky to be living in a time when we have this available to us. And so it's very exciting to me. I know that it just made all the difference when I found out about it. And yeah. Because like you, my intervening career, I didn't do any writing. And so I didn't know what all was out there. But so you found Vella, you came out here, you wrote your story, you got in there. Did you do any reading on other Vellas?
Oh, yeah. So In terms of the novellas that I've been reading a lot of them, so it's hard to pick just a handful. But I mean, the ones that have stood out, probably Monarch's Daughter by Tirzah Hawkins.
She's gonna lose her mind.
Yep.
She loves it. I think that's her baby. She's written several books.
Yes.
But Monarch's Daughter is her baby. She loves that thing. And I am so happy to hear a shout out for it.
So yeah, so that was one of the ones that stands out. The other ones would be like Die Again Today and Speak of the Devil, which are related both by Karen Nordhaus.
Die Again Today.
Yeah, Die Again Today was like the first one, and then she has now 2 sequels to it. So Speak of the Devil is one of them. I actually read Speak of the Devil first, and then circle back to the prequel, or the predecessor to it. Let's see, Knight Rider by Robin Roberts. And the other one that stood out in my mind was Mystic Lady by Sheila Selinger.
Oh yeah, yep, most definitely.
So if I had to pick 4 that I noticed or stood out in my mind, those would be the 4.
Well,
and there were a lot of others.
Now, Die Again Today and Speak of the Devil. Who is the author of that?
Karen Cody Nordhaus, Nordhus.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I always love hearing about Velas I don't know anything about during these interviews, because I go check them out. And well, so that's good. You got your shout outs already there. And you've done such a good job of sort of putting yourself in the slipstream from what I've read on your Vela. And you've got down the length of the episodes. Your episodes are short, which seems to be the most popular way to go. In between 1,000 and 1,500 seems to be the sweet spot.
Yep.
And
yeah, so writing for the Vela audience, the format, you do have to do some things a little different than you would for a conventional novel. It's the length of the episodes, and the pace of the episodes needs to be a little bit different. You've got to look for opportunities or breaks between the chapters that have not, you don't have to have a cliffhanger every time, but you need to have them periodically at the breaking points. So the pace is a little bit different, and you need to approach it that way as an author when you're putting your chapters together. It's not quite the same as just taking a novel and splitting up the chapters or something. You do need to put some thought into it.
Right. And would you say that the pace of an episodic work is faster with less detail?
It needs to be faster. Detail. Yeah, I can't give up all of the detail, but yeah, I know a lot of them have gone that route. That's a weakness of mine. I like descriptions.
I do too.
And so I do indulge myself a little bit in that respect, in terms of setting up the scene. And again, when you're writing fantasy, because a lot of time in fantasy is spent setting up something that's strange and unusual, and it's not. I can't say they went to the grocery store and I don't have to describe the grocery store, because everyone's seen a grocery store. I have to describe, well, they went to the market and this is what the market was like. And there were people hawking their wares because it was an open air market. And I mean, all these details that you got to fill in to bring them into a world that's different from their own, which appeals to me. But as a fantasy writer, you've got to spend the time doing that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a good experience. It's, as I said, it's something that's still in its infancy. I mean, it hasn't been around that long, and when you're watching it, you can see where they're still experimenting with it. And when they first came out with it, they had of course, the featured stories, which they still have. And then I want to say 6 months ago, they suddenly had regularly updated stories. It's like, okay.
Right. They started out with the completed stories, though.
Yeah, and the completed story.
It was featured, then they stuck the completed, and then it was, regularly updated.
So they keep adding things to it, and they're still experimenting with what they want to see and how it's going to evolve. And again, I mean, looking at because if you want to be an author and you want to do this thing, I mean, the good and the bad is you're not just the author, you're the publisher now, which means you need to know your market. So I mean, I did do some market surveys and try to figure out, okay, what are the other authors doing and so forth. So I took a couple snapshots, and I can see in the snapshots how Vela has changed. So if you go to like July of 2021, when it was new, if you were to look, so I took, again, because I'm a fantasy author, I looked at the 10 top fave fantasies just to figure out, okay, what are they writing and where are they coming from? 2 of them were Wattpad authors. 1 of them was a webtoon author. And by November of 2021, the top 10, nobody from Wattpad, nobody from webtoons. So the ones who had experimented coming over from those platforms, they either didn't stay at the top, or maybe they decided that they weren't comfortable with the new form. I don't know. But you saw less of them.
That's
6 months
fascinating.
later.
You're the first person I've heard that screenshotted the platform.
So you take a look at, and so it's like I said, it's still evolving. And then I'm expecting in the next couple of years or so, I would expect it to evolve more as Amazon tries to figure out what they want to do with it and how it's going to fit into their portfolio.
Fascinating. So what do you think of the crown system?
The thing that I have with the crown system is that you got, the only ones you get visibility to are the top 250. And they can be from any category. So you take a look at the different categories, and for me, it's not terrible. 24% of the I just did the basic math. 24% of the folks who have a crown are fantasy writers. So it tells me, okay, there is some kind of fantasy representation. But if I was like a mystery writer, it's only 7%. So depending on what your genre is, you may or may not have as good of a chance at getting into that meager batch of 250. So
what does romance have?
Romance is 62%. 62% of all novels with the crown categorize themselves as romance. Remember, you're allowed to pick 2. But yeah, 62% when I did the quick survey. So it's like, yeah, that's probably about what I would think. So romance is a big piece of it. So in terms of one of the things that I would say, gee, this needs to be tweaked a little bit. It's like, yeah, they kind of need to put out categories, and it's like, I'd really like to see the top 250 in each category, not necessarily the top 250 Velas and everything.
Right.
Because it's much easier to get lost when it's just this narrow 250 top crowned
right
big pile that's a mix and match of every category, and hopefully you squeeze your way in.
And the crown system, to me, I think it's hard to find and hard to deal with, because you really understand what it is initially.
Yeah, new people coming. I mean, that's one of the things we have to fight with as authors on Vela to begin with. Is a lot of people don't even know what Vela is. So you're trying to introduce them to Vela, and along the way, you hope that they pick up on the crown system.
Yeah.
And I want you to
explain it.
Yeah. I hope they pick up on where the crown button is. The like at least is at the bottom of the episode, but the crown just kind of appears once a week.
That's only if you buy tokens.
If you buy, yes.
Only if you've got enough sense to buy the tokens. And some people don't even know you got to buy the tokens.
Yeah. So it's as a system that they're trying to introduce new people to, it's going to take a little bit of time.
So in that vein, here comes my next question. If you were in charge, what, if anything, would you do differently in Vela?
So I think I'd say 2 broad categories. One is kind of what we were saying, which I would say falls under the heading of easier to navigate. It should be easier to figure out how to give the crown, if that's what the system you want to use. It should be easier for them people to understand how to give thumbs up. It should be easier to find things that are in the category that you're interested in. You're a new user, you walk in, you're interested in, let's say, paranormal or something. Well, you should be able to find that really, really easy. And you should be able to narrow down to books that are, or Velas that are in that category much more easily. So I think that ease of navigation is something that they need to clean up a little bit. They know how to do that. I mean, Amazon's done this for a while. So all of these that need ease of navigation things, such as Amazon ads, fall into that category too. Yeah, I think they'll eventually get it. The other major category, though, is something different, which is to say, if you want Vela to be something that stands above the crowd in terms of being a new experience for the readers, I think the other side of it is social media. It needs to become a little bit of a social media experience. It needs to become, this is the opportunity for readers and writers to interact.
Yeah.
So for example, you put out these videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Well, why does Amazon not have authors the opportunity to put out maybe 2-minute videos every so often of, this is what I'm working on, I'm really excited about this? I mean, an opportunity to interact with the audience and get feedback and make it more of a user experience that's different and unique. Because if all this, it becomes as, oh, it's, you know, it's just like some other brand X, then that's really not going to draw the folks in. You want to give them an experience that's new and better and unique. And I do think that the way they would do that would be to give them kind of that social media experience. It's more interactive. And that is a hard thing to do. But I think if they want this to stand above the crowd, that's where eventually Amazon's going to have to go with it.
Personally, I think they're working on it.
I certainly hope so.
From a tech standpoint, I think they're working on it. But it's this stuff is so much more complex than people understand, you know.
Yep.
I don't know what you wound up doing for a career. Did you work in tech also?
I am a engineer. I work for this company called Pratt & Whitney.
Oh.
So we make jet engines.
Well, there you go. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a writer, but you can be.
Yep. We had a rocket division at one time, yes.
Wow.
I did work with them. Yep.
Well, I'm impressed, John. I really am. And I really hope that, do you have other, well, you're saying you're going to finish book 4 of Callisto's story. And you just said you're going to have some spin-offs of that story. So you're going to stay in that world and you're going to.
For a little bit. So the original story was epic fantasy. So it has a lot of characters, a lot of individuals, of which Callisto was just one.
Right.
And she appears in the 3rd book in the series. And the reason I wrote the Vela was because I felt that she deserved a little bit better treatment in terms of how did she get to be the person she is at that point. So this is like a decade earlier, when she's much younger. And it's her experience coming of age and understanding her place in the world and taking control of it and defining her own destiny. So I mean, as you can kind of guess from the backdrop, Callisto story is a werewolf story, but it's in a epic fantasy setting.
Yes.
So it's not like an urban fantasy, like a lot of them tend to be. It is epic fantasy. So within that setting, she is a member of a race that has been hunted out of existence throughout much of the kingdom where she lives. So she always has to be looking over her shoulder and wondering if she's going to be found, and it becomes kind of what shapes her person. I mean, so even her name, and that's when I pick names for my novels, I like to sometimes give subtle nods to mythology and history. Callisto was one of the daughters of Lycaon. I mean, she was lycanthrope. I mean, that's where her name comes from. She was one of the original Greek myths of werewolves.
I remembered her name, but I couldn't place where it was.
So Lycaon was the original werewolf in Greek mythology type figure, and then of course he had sons and daughters, of which Callisto was one. So that's where I drew the name from, as kind of a subtle wink to history and mythology.
Oh, that's cool.
And again, it's kind of her particular piece of the world. And when I choose names and I choose languages for the different kingdoms of the fantasy environment, I like to pick contrasting palettes of language. So, which is why Callisto is Greek. And so a lot of the language names of the people in her part of the world are of Greek origin, and they don't sound the same as our Latin type naming conventions would be in English, that we're so used to. And then other parts of the world, for example, the Fey languages draw very heavily on Welsh, in terms of how they sound and the names that I chose for them.
Wow.
And that's kind of a nod to Tolkien, who kind of set the precedent that elves should sound like they're Welsh. So I try to have that kind of texture to the world, to give it the feeling that it's a broad world. It's not just one little narrow city or kingdom. It's much broader than that. But Callisto's story is one piece of it, and I did feel that she needed her due, and I definitely want to finish her story, both in the current Vela and in a couple of sequels that will go with it.
Well, I'm definitely going to put this on my to be read list. And let me ask you this, what would you like to say to the folks who will be clicking on your link below and checking out your work? Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
I would say that I hope that they enjoyed it. It was great to write. When as an author, when you write some of these characters, it almost feels like they're looking over your shoulder saying, no, this is how I would tell my story. And I certainly felt that way with Callisto. This is how you should tell it. So I feel that stories are like individuals. They have different ones, have different stories and different ways of telling it. And I hope they can become absorbed and enjoy this one, and many others. So it's a great opportunity.
Sounds like you've really worked hard on this, and you know that it's a cohesive story, and epic fantasy is hard to write.
Yeah. Well, which is why writing the Vela, part of the reason why writing the Vela was so enjoyable, because it's kind of like the icing on the cake. It doesn't have to be the whole cake. It's just the icing.
Right.
So it's a small piece of it. You don't have to have it all here. And enjoy this particular piece of the larger picture.
I like that. I like the way you described that. So that's it for us, I guess, unless you have something else to say. And I'd be happy
thanks for having me. Thanks for all that Televela has done for the community.
Well, thank you. And everybody, come back again. We're going to have a lot more interviews. The summer's not over yet. We've got other things planned. So for now, this is Azriel Lawless and John Golan. Go out and check his story out. Links will be right there in the description. Thank you again for watching. Bye.
Bye.